All right, so now you know why you need a media kit, what it is, what goes into it, and what format to have it in. But all you have to do now is to make it look good, and you're not a graphics designer. Now, if you are a graphics designer, then kudos to you, and you might actually even skip this section if you'd like. But if you're not, which is most likely the scenario, this is a tough part of putting it together because you need to make sure that it looks good. This is exactly where the graphics, the presentation matters, and you really can't cut too many corners with this one. Now, I have a service on my website where I do this for you, of course, but it does cost money. Other people offer it, and that costs money as well. If you kind of want to do it yourself, you have, as always, two choices. I know I've talked about it in other courses, but let me go over this again. Now, first one, it is to essentially learn how to do graphics yourself. You don't have to become an expert, but you have to become an expert enough to be able to put it together. Now, in some cases, you can still use Microsoft Word. You can use PowerPoint, but you will probably have some major limitations. So you would have to really know how to use those to create some relatively good graphics. There are templates that they have in there, but it's all quite limited. What I would suggest, if you do want to do this yourself, is to learn a graphics software, because it will help you in many other cases when you're running a social media project, from graphics in your header of your channel or your blog. Of course, if you're posting something on Instagram, that matters a lot, to graphics that you put on your videos and on your images. It's a good skill to have where you don't have to consistently outsource it or struggle with it. So I would recommend, if you are going to learn, you would learn something like Photoshop. That is the most common software, but don't forget, this is something you have to pay for on a regular basis, about $20-$30 a month, depending what kind of deals they have on their website. You do get updates with it, so that's pretty cool. But the learning curve is pretty steep, so that's the bad news. The good news is you don't need to learn like 95% of all the features that it has, because it really is very, very extensive. You really need about 5% in order to put together a really good graphical presentation together, whether it is for Media Kit or for your channel art or for the header for your website. But go to YouTube, take a few classes. There is a trial version that they offer, I think, for about 14 days. Again, depends on when you are looking into getting it, and see if it's for you. There are other different software that you can use that are cheaper, and sometimes you just pay upfront for it. Some of them web-based, some of them are apps like Snapseed. And the Snapseed is really limited. I wouldn't recommend using it, or really any other app, in order to put together a media kit. But again, things are moving towards mobile, so it could be a possibility. If you're extremely limited, I would still keep it to something that you can use on your desktop or a laptop. There are some web-based solutions as well, but I would strongly recommend, if you want to do this yourself, which I think at some point you do, take some time and learn Photoshop or similar software so you can do this yourself. Now, the other option, of course, is to pay someone else to do it. You can hire a designer, of course, and there are quite a few places where you can do that. It is not cheap, but if you're going to go that route, I would strongly recommend Fiverr. It's a website where it's kind of an eBay of freelancers, and that includes graphics designers. They are all over the world in different countries. Now, of course, if you're dealing with somebody in a different country, yes, it will be much cheaper. However, the language barrier is different, and there are pros and cons for that. But you can read up on that, or you can have your own experience. It's the good thing about Fiverr and a few other websites that provide very similar service is every graphics designer, everybody who's on there gets rated, so you can see what the average rating is, how many people this person has already designed something for. You can also see the sample of their work. Be a little bit careful with that, because some of them steal other people's work and post it in their galleries. So make sure that you have good number of reviews. Obviously, you want to make sure that rating is up, but you can you can get the media kit there if you're working with the right designer for a relatively reasonable price. And of course, if you find a graphics designer that you're working with and you like working with and they're doing a good job or for a decent rate, you wanna keep that person. You want to make sure that many other graphical needs that you will definitely have, you can work with that person. But it is also a journey, just like with everything else. I'm recommending this as another option, but it's a hit and miss, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 trials before you get to a graphics designer that you really like. But by then you already spend money on others, so altogether it costs a little bit more than you probably wanted in the beginning. But it is an option. Just like I said, if you don't have a skill, a lot of times you have to pay for. But in this case, Media Kit is so important that you definitely should set a budget aside if you don't want to set a time aside to learn it yourself in order to put it together. Now, one last thing I want to mention here as well is make sure that you can update it. If let's say you outsource it to somebody who does it in Photoshop format, but all they deliver to you is a PDF file and then they disappear or you forget about them, and then in another half a year you need to update your stats, which you do need to do, or you want to add the section or update a text, you have nothing to work with. You cannot update a PDF file. You kind of have to start over. So you want to make sure when you're accepting work from somebody, they will give you what's called a source file. So for example, if they're doing their work in Photoshop, ask them to deliver a Photoshop file. Now it may be useless to you as far as being able to update it yourself, unless you have it done at first and then you learn Photoshop later as the time goes by and you have more time to do that. Or if you hire a different designer, that way you can send them this source file and say, here's the file, make sure to correct these things, and just pay them for that work instead of recreating your entire media kit, which will cost you probably just as much. So make sure that you're keeping an updatable format, which most likely going to be a Photoshop or wherever it might be, because pretty much all graphics software have everything in layers, everything in the layers, and that's not something that can be passed to the PDF format. So this is a decision you're going to have to make for yourself. It is a business decision. The good part is that you can make a decision right now that you will change in the future, depending on your budget and the amount of time and the need. So pick the one that works for you right now. If you're just starting out, make sure that you can get off the ground relatively quickly. If you do have time, then learning something that will essentially benefit you in the future in many other ways may make sense. But this is a decision that's up to you. All I absolutely demand, and because the brands demand it, is that your media kit looks absolutely amazing, that you can beat out other social media influencers, at least for the attention of the brand. You may not win them over by your stats or maybe even sometimes content, but you want to make sure that at least you get a fair shot, and therefore your media kit needs to look amazing.